Thank you everybody for coming. We're really pleased to see so many people here. Obviously this is a big day for us. It's been a long time in the making and we're really excited to be here. And pleased that so many of you are interested in joining us. So welcome to our launch. We're going to start by just running through some housekeeping. If you could change the slide, please, Anita. So please would you keep your microphones off unless you're speaking. We wanted to let you know that we're recording and transcribing the meeting, and we may want to use some clips, but we will get your permission if we want to use yours. Please would you put your name and organisation into your profile unless you want to stay anonymous, which is of course absolutely fine with us. You can add questions to the Q&A function if you have one. We've discovered that some people don't have one. If that's the case, please use the chat instead. And if you ask a question, then it's possible that we'll come to you to ask it. So if that happens, then please just unmute yourself and we'll invite you to speak. You can also add comments to the chat function. And we're going to be using Mentimeter to check in and check out, which we'll do shortly. There are a couple of ways that you can enter the Mentimeter. So we'll give you those instructions. And if anyone has any problems, please raise their hand. Alice has got a question. There should be 3 dots on, if you click on your profile picture, there should be 3, sorry, on your page, that your video screen, there should be 3 little dots that say more options.
Yeah, it doesn't give me that option.
Oh, it doesn't.
Sorry.
Well, don't worry. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Yeah, leave it as it is. If you want to pop your name in the chat, please feel free. Okay, how are we looking now, Nina? All good? So hopefully everybody's here. I'll just leave this slide up for a little bit longer for those who've just arrived. Is there anything else in the chat that I need to have a look at? Great, Brendan, great to have you here. Oops, I almost pressed exit the meeting then. That would have been not a great move. Please can you move on to the next slide, Anita? So we're going to kick off. Oh, could you pop one back, please? We're going to kick off by doing a quick check-in. Using Menti, so if you go to menti.com on your device, either your phone or your laptop, and you can enter that code 24149768, or you can use the Q&R code. You can get your camera up on your phone or any kind of Q&R reader, and you can flash that up, and you should be able to enter the site that way. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Maybe could one of you, Nina or Anita, put the housekeeping points in the chat so that those people... Have you managed to go straight in, Alice?
Yes.
Okay.
It showed me a question.
Oh, that's great. You've got the question. So feel free to go ahead and answer that. So what one word would you use to describe how you feel about justice reform at the moment? It might give you the option to do more than one word, but it's up to you how many you put. I think you can do up to 3. But a single words, it won't take it if you try to put more, like a couple of words together. Thank you to everybody who's joining and putting their information in the chat. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Menti now. Bear with me just one second. On my screen. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
You can. So we're asking you, what one word would you use to describe how you feel about justice reform at the moment? And we're using Mentimeter. If anybody's struggling, Nina and Anita will help you via the chat, or you could just pop it in the chat. See how it unfolds. Okay, it looks like we've slowed down. Oh, I'll give you one more minute of time. Okay, so I think that looks as though we've slowed right down. So, interestingly, the biggest word is hopeful. So hopefully that gives us some hope that majority of us are feeling hopeful, but there are also some more slightly less than hopeful, cautiously optimistic, quietly optimistic, potentially exciting. So there's some kind of a skeptical, hopeful-ish. I like that one. There's some really other ones where people are feeling not so positive, so overwhelmed, depressed, desperate, frustrated, slow. And there are also some words coming up there like racist. There was another one that I saw just a minute ago. Oh, they just moved again, so that hasn't helped. Neglected, moribund, wary, interesting. At some point, we'd love to have a conversation with you about all of these words that are coming up and why you're feeling like that, but not for today. That's something for another time. So thank you everybody for sharing all your thoughts with us. I'm just going to stop sharing and we're going to move on. If you could move the slide on. Sorry, just bear with me a second while I catch myself back up. If you could share your screen again, Anita.
Should be
Is it there?
sharing now.
I can't see it. Hold on there.
Yeah, it's sharing for me.
Okay, for some reason I can't see it. So we're just going to welcome everybody who's come in since we started. Hopefully the housekeeping points are in the chat. We've just done a very quick check-in, thinking about kind of one feeling that we have around how we feel about justice reform using one word. If you feel like you want to add that to the chat and you hadn't participated yet, please do so. We're going to move on now to introduce ourselves and introduce Justice Futures very briefly, and then we'll be inviting our speakers to speak, and then we'll come back at the end and talk a bit more about what we intend to do following on from that chat. So just to kick off, we'll introduce ourselves one by one. So I'm Gemma. I'm a social researcher by background, and I've been a policy advocate for a long time, over 20 years. I've worked in academia, the voluntary sector, in Parliament, and I'm currently working in consultancy. I studied social policy and criminal justice policy, and for me, that's where my kind of interest in systems started. Looking at the intersection between those systems and how what happens in one system can impact on how you might be treated in another system or what happens to you in another system. So that intersection is something that I've always been really interested in. A few years ago, when I left my job in Parliament, I was an advisor to the Justice Committee for a long time, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next, and I was looking for something, and a couple of years ago I found that in the guise of Anna, actually. Had a conversation. I was like feeling a bit stuck, don't know what to do, there must be another way to do this, and so I started on my systems thinking journey and took some training with her. I've also done some training on deep democracy, non-violent communication, how to hold conversations in complexity, and I've got previous experience in coaching and mentoring, things like that. I'm going to pass over to Nina now.
Great, thanks, Gemma. So my name's Nina Champion. I've worked across the criminal justice system all my career. I started as a lawyer, working in police stations and courts, but very quickly saw the revolving door, saw how the system wasn't working, and moved to work in charities. So I have run various prevention, rehabilitation and resettlement projects, both in prisons and in the community. I then had a period working in Parliament where I studied for a master's in government policy and politics. And then I moved back into the voluntary sector again, influencing change around prison education, both in the UK and Europe. And whilst I was in that role, I was fortunate to get a Churchill Fellowship, which some of you may have heard of. And I visited the States. And on my return as director of the Criminal Justice Alliance, I established a lived experience leadership programme called Elevate. And for the last year, I've been working as a consultant on various policy, strategy and communications projects. And I'm really excited to put my learning from the School of System Change as well into practice with Justice Futures. And I'll pass on to Anita.
Hello. Well, I've spent my whole career in the voluntary sector, and I've used my academic grounding, which is again like Gemma in social policy and social science, to develop the many roles that I've had at working at the Howard League for Penal Reform. So I worked across the policy and the public affairs briefs, but ultimately I spent most of my time developing research at the Howard League as its research director, trying to establish the charity's evidence base, its capacity for research, building relationships across the system also with funders and the academic community. What I was really interested in was about how we can work together and establish well-evidenced reform and transformative change. How we did that and how well we did that is, I don't know. And I think that's where I'm really excited to see where Justice Futures can take that. So part of my latter work, I have been sort of really focusing on different ways to make a difference. So really thinking about participatory and creative methodologies, but also sort of resting on the idea about what impact means. And so I've also become a member of the UKRI ESRC grant assessment panel and been on that for a good few years. But I also was a user representative on the last two REF panels to assess the academic contribution of research outside academia. So first off in the law panel and then lastly on the social policy one. So I really am interested about how do we transform things and make a difference. So my work has spanned a lot of issues because it's not just about crime, it's about social policies too. So I've looked at things like gambling related harms, hope, health, and there are various issues across the system to try and establish change. But I feel that now, with us three heads coming together, we've got a chance to make a real difference. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. So we're going to move on now very briefly to talk a little bit about how Justice Futures came about. If you could change the slides, Anita. I'm really sorry I can't see them for some reason, even though they worked perfectly before. So Justice Futures was created by myself, Nina and Anita, and we were on a kind of windswept weekend away on the Kent coast. And after long careers working across criminal and social justice sectors in various roles, we were all now working as independent consultants. We'd done a lot of reflection on what we had learnt, and we were each grappling with how to increase our impact.
On the Saturday, as we huddled in the cafe out of the wind and rain, we shared collective frustrations about the current state of the criminal and social justice systems that we'd spent the past few decades trying to influence and change, with varying levels of success. We spoke about our experiences seeing justice systems innovate locally, nationally, and globally, and debated what prevented pockets of good practice being scaled up and well-evidenced recommendations being implemented. What we do in the next chapter of our careers, and what we do in the next chapter of our careers to bring about the changes we wanted to see, we pondered.
Then we woke up on the Sunday and we woke up to this beautiful orange sunrise that you can see in the screen, and the skies had cleared and we were feeling a lot more positive and hopeful on that day. So we took a long walk along the beach and we discussed where we saw systems starting to shift and reflected on the approaches that we thought were to bring about those changes. We reminisced on moments of joy and stories of hope from our careers and our determination to create more of these. We also shared about learnings from courses that we'd taken on systems thinking and innovation, creative and participatory research, and transformative equity. And we soon realised our mutual passion for seeing, thinking, and doing differently to bring about transformative change in our justice systems. But we knew we couldn't do this alone.
So inspired by people we'd met working in the health, the finance and the climate sectors, as well as people involved in and impacted by justice systems here and in other countries, we knew that we needed to build local, national and global movements of people using transformative approaches to increase our individual and our collective impact.
The idea of Justice Futures Community Interest Company was therefore born.
And we hope you'll join us on our journey of learning, experimentation and transformative change to build tomorrow's justice systems today.
This is where I'm struggling with the slide.
Okay,
What-
so we're
sorry.
moving on then.
So our vision is a future where our criminal, civil and social justice systems work and adapt so that people and planet can thrive.
And our mission is that we use transformative practices to energise and empower people in the UK and globally to explore and evolve future approaches to crime and justice by seeing, thinking and doing differently to build tomorrow today.
Thank you. Now we're going to share with you some values. We've seized on the E's. I'm not going to read them all out because you can read them for yourselves, but really we just wanted to find ways of having different conversations, using different methods, trying to ensure that we're inclusive, working together to understand really deeply how things work, how can we see the bigger picture, and how can we work collectively and not focus just on one part of the picture. So currently we feel as though people often break the system down into silos and we are often propping up the system that's not working. Anita and I recently attended the Magistrates Association conference, which was talking about using sticking plaster solutions. And I think all of us, we saw the words that we had at the beginning, have felt frustrated that what we're doing to try to change the systems is not always working. So what we're trying to do is bring some different approaches, but all do this really collaboratively. And we'll talk a bit more about how we do that later on.